All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Jeremy here with the Guillette Group in the high country, and we get asked all the time, what is winter like in the high country? Can I handle the weather? Am I going to get snowed in? What is it like for beach and sugar and app ski, for skiing, tubing, snowboarding, etc.? In this video, we're going to tackle both lifestyle and practical applications of dealing with winter in the high country. All right, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about living in the high country, especially in winter. Whether you're thinking about buying a second home, a vacation rental, moving full-time, it doesn't matter. Winter is part of the lifestyle here, and it goes far beyond snow and skiing. It's cozy nights by the fireplace. It is definitely part of the lifestyle. We're going to talk about it all right now. All right, we've talked about this before, but it is a four-season living in the high country. So when we think about winter, we've talked about it. Of course, there's skiing, tubing, all the things that you're going to want to do as it relates to snow, but there's more of a lifestyle. When we think about the towns themselves, Banner Elk, Blowing Rock in particular, Boone to a degree, these towns light up with holiday cheer. I mean, I've talked about it. I jokingly call Blowing Rock like a Hallmark movie set. It is magical when you're in these towns around the holidays and throughout the winter. And when we talk about lifestyle, when you think about spring, summer, fall, it's hiking, it's a lot of outdoor activities. Winter is kind of the same way, except that it's typically a little bit of a slower pace, with the exception of the ski weekends and of course any breaks, Christmas break, New Year's break. These mountains get really busy those times of year. But in general, it's a much slower time, especially midweek or during the week. All right, so let's just dive right in. Let's talk about the lifestyle as it relates to skiing and snowboarding. You've got Sugar Mountain, Beach Mountain, and Appalachian Ski Mountain. Those are all real close. Talked about this before. Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain sit to either side of Banner Elk. App Ski is super close to Blowing Rock, so you've got options depending on where you're looking. Let's talk about tubing and to a lesser degree, ice skating. So Hawk's Nest has great tubing. Reservations, highly recommended, especially like I said, if it's going to be on a weekend. Same thing with Beach Mountain. They also have tubing. They used to have ice skating, but I think that's actually where they put the tubing. So I'm not as familiar with the ice skating, quite honestly. We don't really do that activity, but we have done the skiing at Beach, we've done skiing at Sugar, and then tubing at Hawk's Nest. And this is kind of fun, just like the rest of the year. There are festivals throughout all of these seasons. You've got Winterfest that goes on with polar plunges, chili cook-offs, all that kind of stuff that will remind you of winter. For those of us in Florida, we don't really get to experience that, so it is a great escape, but we get to do it on our terms. So I kind of jokingly tell my friends now, I used to live up north. I grew up in Massachusetts, lived in Illinois for a long time, in and out of Chicago for 13 years. We get to now visit snow versus the other way around. We kind of love that. But regardless of what you're looking for, you are going to experience winter up in the mountains. And I'll tell you one quick story, which I think is pretty funny. When we bought at the top of Beach Mountain, it was back in 2022. It was pretty wild. We closed November 9th. I still remember this, 2022. And the place that we purchased sat at about 5,100 feet. And we came up for closing and then decided, oh, we'll spend a week there. We'll do some light painting, a few projects, kind of make it more personal for us. And when Angie got out of the car, she said to me, and I'm not even exaggerating. She literally couldn't complete a sentence. It was like 25 degrees. The wind was blowing. I said, you know what? You go inside, turn on the fireplace. I'll unload the car. Let's get this thing warmed up. But your blood does thin when you're coming from Florida. And honestly, a lot of the buyers in that area, they're coming from Florida. All right, not to beat a dead horse. I've already mentioned this and I've mentioned it in other videos, but these towns are really captivating in the winter time. If you happen to time it where you get a little bit of a snow and it's flurrying or it's falling from the sky and you've got the backdrop of Blowing Rock or Banner Elk and you're walking through town, they've got lights up all throughout. It really is absolutely beautiful. Now let's talk about some indoor fun. They still have the breweries. Those aren't going to close. You've got wineries. You've got all kinds of restaurants, everything from Blowing Rock, Boone to Beach, certainly Banner Elk. There's a lot to do in the wintertime, but you just want to be mindful that you might encounter some weather, especially if you're going to be on the mountains. All right, so now let's talk about the practical side. I just shared snow. On average, Boone gets between 30 to 40 inches of snow each winter. And Beach and Sugar get quite a bit more. You're going to climb another almost 2,000 feet in elevation between Boone and then Beach and Sugar. So of course, at those elevations, you're going to get a lot more snow. And of course, on the mountain themselves, they actually make a lot of snow. And it's interesting, there are areas like Ski Loft on beach, as an example. The snow blows from the snowmaker. So depending on even where you're looking within these communities, having some local knowledge can really help, because you're going to have a plan as it relates to snow removal, and just navigating, even coming and going from your own driveway, depending on the grade or how many steps there are, etc. All right, so now let's talk about snow removal. Actually, more so, let's talk about just navigating. So four-wheel drive, highly recommended in the wintertime if you're going to be in the high country. Depending on if you're renting or if you're purchasing, you're going to want to have four-wheel drive if you're on the mountains. And in fact, when you get to the bottom of Beach Mountain, there's a flashing light that will basically tell you no two-wheel car drives going up the parkway. There is a spot right there, just past it actually, on the left-hand side, where they will actually sell you tire chains to get up the mountain. So absolutely four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, it's no doubt an absolute must if you're going to be on beach or sugar. Depends on the grade, of course, of the driveway or the unit potentially that you purchase or might be renting. Down in Boone, it's still a really good idea, as I shared, 30 to 40 inches a year. Rear-wheel drive, probably not most optimal. You're at least going to want front-wheel drive just to navigate the area. Four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, highly recommend. All right, so more so on the snow removal, you're going to be, if you have a single family home as an example, you're going to want to be contracted with someone that can manage the snow removal and or spread some ice melt or other types of, I don't want to say chemicals, but salt as an example, to ensure your own safety, or if you rent it, potentially the safety of any guests that you have coming. If you're in a community that includes it, just make sure you understand, and we can talk through that through the purchase process, exactly what's included in a POA or an HOA as it relates to snow removal. The parkway, when you go, these ski resorts, they want you to come. So I will tell you, like on Beach Mountain as an example, snow removal is really good on Beach Mountain Parkway. They want to make sure that you can get to the resort and back home safely. They're all over it. They're up and down that parkway a lot. As you get further from the parkway and further beyond the resort, it's not nearly as frequent. So again, these are the things you'll want to think about as you're determining what the right property is for you. Another consideration you want to think about is utilities and prep. You want to make sure that the property is winterized. So like, when I leave Beach Mountain, I turn the water off every time, because freezing pipes, it's a real thing. In fact, I think it was January of 2024, maybe 23, I don't recall. It was like a crazy cold spell. I mean, I want to say it was like 30 below 32, 30 below zero, I don't know, whatever. It was really cold, and there was a rush on trying to get plumbers to basically fix all the frozen pipes, and then there were leaks because the pipes expand, then they contract after they thaw. It's a problem. So you want to make sure you've got good insulation. You typically want to have a backup heat source. So a lot of the homes in the high country have electric heat. You might want to ensure that you have another heat source. A lot of people have propane for fireplaces or a space heater, depending on where it is. Many of the newer builds will include a mini split, which has both heat and cool, or air for the summertime. And you might even want to consider a backup generator, and the reason being, especially as you get further into some of these mountain communities, these snowstorms, if it's a wet, heavy snow, the trees are gonna start to lose limbs or fall even in some cases. Many times they'll take down lines. If it's accompanied with a storm, you might be out of power. So having a backup generator, having an alternative heat source could be really important when you're thinking about protecting the investment that you're going to make in the high country. All right, so let's talk about travel. A lot of you guys are going to arrive by air. Typically, Charlotte's going to be minimally impacted. It very rarely closes due to inclement weather. Although I will tell you, totally random, I was flying back from St. Croix one winter. I was flying US Air at the time, which became American. We got stuck in Charlotte because they had like 2 inches of snow. They're totally unprepared to handle 2 inches of snow. They basically canceled all flights for like a day and a half. I was what they call a chairman on US Air, so I flew a lot. And they were like, we can get you home or on a flight in 3 days. We rented a car and drove home. It was 13 hours, or 11 hours from there. So we did that. In the high country, they're much more prepared. They're going to be maintaining the roads. But again, as soon as you get off the main roads and the spines and get further into these communities, it's going to be more challenging, hence the absolute must-have of four-wheel drive in the wintertime. All right, so now let's spend a minute or two. We're just going to talk about pros and cons of the winter living in the high country. Well, the first pro, It's like a winter wonderland. It's the reason people come from all over the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic. It's for skiing. It's for the snow. It's to be able to enjoy all of that. Another pro, depending on how you want to use your property, is the demand is super high, especially on the weekends. So if you're thinking about buying into some sort of a property where you can do short-term rentals, there's actually quite a bit of demand, especially around the holidays, but pretty much every weekend in ski season. And the third pro I would say is just the lifestyle. These are smaller towns. It has a much more calm and relaxed vibe than many of the bigger cities that you'd experience or even further out west. All right, so similarly, let's think about some of the cons. Driveways, they can be steep on these mountains. So you do want to be cognizant of, your arrangement, how accessible getting into the unit or the home might be. Another con is, it's not really a con, but you have to be prepared for this. You got to really allocate for the heating budget. So again, many of these homes have electric heat. It's not the most efficient, but they're not running natural gas lines up and down these mountains. So it's probably more common than less, I would say. And then often the case, you're going to have propane. Most people that have propane either have a buried tank or a tank somewhere on the property, at which point you're going to have a service. They're going to come out. It's usually once a week. In my case, it's every Monday. They'll come out, look at how much propane you have, top it off, and then you just get a bill. Pretty efficient service. The last thing you want to think about is, because they're small towns, is there can be a little more congestion as you look at weekends and add in inclement weather. You can have quite a bit of slowdown, in terms of just your travel in and around the area. And I'll throw this in, it's kind of a bonus, but not every buyer wants the winter weather. I'll be honest, we like to ski like once a year. We'll bring the boys up, we'll do it. Ideally, I want to be in Southwest Florida. As you guys know, we split time. We're primarily in Southwest Florida, have a team in both locations. We ideally want a summer in the high country because we can get away from the heat and humidity of Florida. But there are so many people in the Carolinas in the wintertime that want to go up and go skiing. They want to be able to rent. So again, depending on what kind of property you're looking for, there's a lot of options in terms of how you might want to use it or even open it up for others to enjoy the high country. All right, so now let's talk about some tips if you're going to be a buyer in the high country in winter. One, it's a good time to buy because not everyone wants to come up in the winter and look at property. But another great tip is a lot of the properties you might be considering are available to rent. How fantastic is that? You have an opportunity almost to test drive a purchase that you're considering. You can't really do that with most houses. So depending on the area that you're looking in, even if it's not the particular home you're looking at, you might be able to rent something in the same community or very nearby to give you a sense of what it's like to live in the high country in the wintertime. And honestly, I would encourage you to come up and look at homes in the wintertime for the reason being you want to see what it's like, how accessible is it. In the summertime, you might not even think about how steep the grade is of a driveway or a street to get to your driveway, or how many stairs there are to get from the driveway to the first floor. Like one of our first experiences when we rented on beach, this is probably 8-9 years ago, it was like this cute little A-frame. It was more of a chalet, technically. But what they didn't mention in the listing description was that the parking area was, I'm not even kidding, probably 40 steps from the parking to the main level or the first level. The main living was actually on the second level. And then there was like a loft area and additional bedrooms on the third level. So depending on who you are, accessibility, like all of this, you really want to not just think through, but actually see in person to experience it before you make a decision that's significant on purchasing. And then while you're up there, talk to the neighbors, find out what it's like. And then even in the property itself, look for things like metal roofs where snow tends to kind of melt off and slide off a little easier. Look for things like the alternative heat sources that I've talked about before. You might even look for things like, in some cases, people have heated driveways. Those are really in the more affluent kind of luxury price points. But that's a huge bonus if you don't have to shovel or salt because you've got a heater. So yes, that's winter in the high country. That's the lifestyle. If you're considering purchasing in the high country, please reach out to us. My team and I, we're here. We're ready to help. If you want to schedule a consultation, we will do that. We'll set up 20-30 minutes. We'll send you our wish list where you can start to document exactly what you're looking for. It really accelerates the first conversation. If you like this video, like it. Please subscribe to the channel. Share it with anyone that's considering purchasing in the high country. And we'll see you the next time around.